angels or aliens? According to UFO researcher and author Nigel Watson, the two could be closer than you think. Tune in to this episode of Real Life Angel Encounters to find out more. Angels. We all have them. They're our unseen guides, our companions, our teachers, and they're all around us. Sometimes they make themselves known in the most miraculous ways. Join me, Level 3 QHHT practitioner, angel communicator, and Reiki master, Christy Clemens Hoffman, with stories from real people who have experienced uplifting phenomena and real-life angel encounters. Hello, and welcome back to Real Life Angel Encounters with me, your host, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Before we get too much further, would you please like this episode and follow or subscribe wherever you're listening, and maybe even share this podcast with your network. Now, if you're so inclined, there is a link in the show description where you can make a donation to this podcast to keep it going and help cover our costs. All right, this episode features Nigel Watson, who is the author of Portraits of Alien Encounters Revisited, High-Strangeness British UFO Cases. Yes, Nigel is a British UFO researcher and author in this field since the 1970s, and he is so widely quoted. He's in nearly all of the paranormal podcasts that I listen to, so I was pleased to have him on the show. Now, if you are interested in this type of thing, I do interview Nigel for the Radiate Wellness podcast, and that episode is going to be coming out in the next weeks and months. So if you've not already subscribed to the Radiate Wellness podcast, please do, so that you're notified when that episode comes out. Now, on the Real Life Angel Encounters podcast today, I am talking to Nigel about his recent article in Fortean Times. And this article is entitled Seeing Angels Instead, High-Strangeness UFO Cases. Now, in his book, Portraits of Alien Encounters Revisited, Chapter 11 is all about angels as aliens. Now, if you remember, earlier in this season of Real Life Angel Encounters, there was the story of Russian cosmonauts who saw angels outside their craft in space. Now, you also might remember from season 1 of this podcast that Mary, a caller from the East Coast of the United States, had reached out to me with stories of her own having to do with aliens who are maybe angels, or angels who are maybe aliens. That story is also in the book, Real Life Angel Encounters, which is out from O Books, a division of Collective Inc. It's out as of this summer, 2025. So you can order the book, Real Life Angel Encounters. Gosh, Goodreads, barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, bookshop.org. And the story that Mary tells is called We're All Alien Somewhere. Because, yeah, angels, aliens, ascended masters, they really don't care what we call them. There is a lot of overlap. So enjoy this episode. Hello, Nigel. I've been so excited to talk to you about this topic. I think the topic of angels and aliens is absolutely fascinating. And I don't know that there's that much difference between the two. Anyway, thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. It's been sunny today in Plymouth, so it's been good this time of year as well because we've had such dull, rainy weather lately. So it's nice to have a sunny day, and the cat's actually gone outside and, and sat in the sun. So she's been very grumpy up to now. So I hope that sets her up for the winter, really.
Oh, yeah, it could be a very long winter if your cat is grumpy.
You never know. Oh,
You never know. So you've got this new article out. It is, let me pull up the title of this article, Seeing Angels Instead, High-Strangeness UFO Cases in Fortean Times. How long have you been researching this?
Since the early 1970s, so quite a long time ago. A bit frightening, really.
That's crazy. And I know you've got a new book out. I interviewed you for the
Yeah,
other podcast. We talked about that. So
yeah.
listeners, please go listen to Radiate Wellness and listen to our discussion about that. And then you interviewed me for Real Life Angel Encounters, the book.
Right. Yeah.
So here we are again. Tell me about this angelic alien connection.
Yeah, I was going through my book, Portraits of Alien Encounters Revisited, and I was looking at the themes in it because it's nice to see if there are any connecting patterns in the book. And sometimes it's only after you've written something you can actually review it and make a bit more sense of it when you've had a bit of time to digest all the information. I did discover, though, that quite a few other people did mention angels in it, especially the Archangel Michael. And then I've found other references since I've had my book published about Archangel Michael in lots of other places. There's encounters by Suka, the academic writer, and she's written about alien encounters, but they focus a lot on dreams and experiences. And she mentions a case, a man she calls a grey man because she wanted to keep him anonymous. But he had this terrible nightmare where he sees a threatening armoured figure attacking him, and then he sees an angel gives him a sword to protect himself and fight off this sinister armoured figure. And I think that's quite a good summary of these sort of experiences. The angel figures always seem to turn up as guardians to help you fight evil. And in my own book, I mention there's Norman Harrison, who had quite a lot of psychic communications, and he saw this odd figure which had a really strange helmet with vertical slits in it. And in the illustration in my book, you can see it's almost face of a grey behind the visor, and it's got a white tunic and a red cross, a figure from the Crusades or something. And he felt this was a character that protected him because he felt there was a lot of evil forces against humanity, and some of it was focused on himself. So it was good he had that guardian figure. He had some other sort of figures as well that also protected him. But it's just intriguing because this illustration he did was done in something in the late 1970s when these spindly greys weren't really popular or anything. And it's just intriguing the way he's drawing this helmet of this sort of black head behind the vertical slits. And also another case I mentioned is of Paul Bennett, who also saw sort of more angels that were illuminations playing with a torch, and then he and his friends saw these sort of angel lights. They feel they're messing about had brought them into being. And his friends and his brother scared of it, but Paul Bennett was intrigued by it all, and he mentioned it having sort of a helmet with vertical slots as well. Another weird thing about that case is exactly a year later, a woman called Jean Hingley in a place called Raleigh Regis in the Midlands of England. She saw three fairy creatures, only small, but they had silvery wings and the silver suits. And she invited them into her inner home, and she gave them a plate of mince pies because this was Christmas time. It seems a weird story, but UFO investigators said there were sort of weird impressions in the snow outside the house as if something had landed. So it was a bit of a weird case, really, because it's not often, I think we're described as angels because it was Christmas time and everything, but we're more almost larger versions of Christmas decorations. But that's the thing as well. The idea of angels sort of varies a lot. Some people just think a glowing figure is
Mhm.
an angel radiating light, which is often the case with UFO entities. But also,
Right.
a lot of them are the traditional ones with wings that are more, I suppose, are guided by painting and illustrations rather than anything that's actually described in the Bible. So it is a sort of ambiguous thing.
It is a sort of ambiguous thing. Now, my book, Real Life Angel Encounters, well, in fact, this podcast, Real Life Angel Encounters, it runs the gamut of all types of beings, and I lump them all under the same umbrella. There's even a story in the book called We're All Aliens Somewhere. And the story of this woman who she had this encounter with aliens or extraterrestrials, I should say, but she took them for angels, and she just knew there was some sort of cross section, cross reference, which is interesting. And your book, Portraits of Alien Encounters Revisited, you've at chapter 11 is about angels, right? So where do you see this overlap?
I've coined the term astro angels
Love
because
that, astro
I
angels.
think because I think they're a combination of religious visions and experiences with our
Yeah.
own technological view of the world, which is filtered in the sense that people now to see aliens and spaceships, and we are to see chariots and the Blessed Virgin Mary. So, in a way, in the article in Fortean Times, I mentioned they're a good mix, really, and that they do symbolize things we expect now. So, the phenomenon's perhaps not changed. It's our perception of what these things are. And perhaps in a less religious society, are less to believe in angels, whereas people are more to believe in aliens or alien visitors. I said some people would equally think of both as a bit suspect, really, but you've had one too many, you know. But
Exactly, right? That I think anymore we associate seeing angels with someone very religious, Joan of Arc or Moses, and we don't necessarily equate seeing angels with regular humans, but aliens, extraterrestrials, we can imagine see average human maybe seeing those. Yeah.
as well mixes in with the idea that these are projections perhaps from our own psyche. I mentioned the case of Carl Jung, the psychoanalyst. He had a dream of a winged being that he called Philemon, and in a dream this angel figure had four keys that would open the key to mysteries. And he felt that when he woke up, the dream did help him sort of realize that the importance of dreams and how they might unlock ideas and thoughts. And he was of the persuasion that these came from your psyche and that we've all got this collective unconscious. That's why we all have similar experiences of, say, Archangel Michael or of aliens or other religious visions, because it's all from our collective unconscious. But I think even he, when he studied flying saucers, he found it hard to understand how flying saucers were often detected by radar or seemed to leave traces. So I think he partly suggested that these things form in our mind can actually take on a reality as well, that we've got some substance to them in the real world. This is something mystics have referred to in the past, you know, that we've been able to create things from our own mind that have an impact on the real world. It depends how far you want to go with that, really, because some people would argue, well, how can the psyche cause things in the sky to be detected by radar? That seems even flimsier than aliens visiting in a ship. But I think Carl Jung was one of the earliest serious people to actually study UFOs and flying saucers. I think his book came out sometime in the 1950s, so the subject was still quite new, really. So I don't know what his take would be on the subject now, but I'm sure he'd still find it equally fascinating because it does tell us a lot about our own minds. And I think some people have also said that we see what we want to see. That was often in the case, say, in the Battle of Mons, British troops ever saw angels or bowmen in the sky of religious figures that protected them, or that would suddenly think they were going to be annihilated by German forces, and the German force would go away when they saw something in the sky, an angel figure or something. And I suppose the skeptics would say this was just that they were exhausted and it was a matter of war nerves and things. But nonetheless, it's fascinating because also troops on the other side also saw things in the sky, and the French soldiers also saw Joan of Arc figures that reflected their own cultural and social background. So people have said we interpret ambiguous things in terms of our own expectations. So I think that's quite a good point that we create our own aliens or we create our own angels in terms of the context of a society we live in.
Right, by what our popular culture is, what we've always heard, and will just the mind fills in the
Mm,
blanks when we see something
mm,
that's unknown, and our mind just fills in details and the context and everything. So of course we've got angels and the winged beings that we all hear about, maybe see on the Christmas cards and Christmas
mm,
decorations on the Christmas tree. And then we've got archangels, which are cut above angels, and then
mm,
the aliens, extraterrestrials.
mm.
So, what do you think differentiates all of these?
I think the whole point about these angels is that, especially if they're seen in terms of astronauts as well, it's a sort of merging of technology with biblical stories, really. There's a power there that's coming from however much the level of belief you have in the Bible, it's still quite an important influence on Western culture, and most people know something about what went on in the Bible. And there's been a lot of people have interpreted lots of things from the Bible as indicating that angels were present, they were messengers, and they would go between heaven and earth. And in a way, aliens have the same. They go between some far off planet and our own. And they're also giving messages, contactees or abductees, or get messages from the aliens, just as religious people got messages in the past. And even people in the past in the Bible, I think Elisa was taken by Archangel Michael into heaven,
Mhm.
so, which is just a bit the abduction stories of today, that people are taken away and giving these messages, which are usually about saving the planet and avoiding atomic war. The only thing that gets me, though, is they don't really specifically tell us how we can stop wars and change climate change. It's just, I think we're trying to just make it certain that we are given this message and we have to do something on our own accord, really. It's a bit of the old Star Trek stories where we weren't supposed to impose on other cultures and civilizations. So you could argue the aliens that people see today are doing exactly the same thing, which is sensible. I think it's also interesting, though, there's another story in my book about the sister of an abductee. She was sort of whisked down the stairs by a sort of whirlwind, and she saw an angel in a jest, and she recited the Lord's Prayer, and she stumbled over it until she got it right. And then when she got the Lord's Prayer right, the jester turned into an angel, and then the two angels disappeared. So I think that's an interesting story because elsewhere people have reported, if you read out the Lord's Prayer or a prayer of Archangel Michael, that it's a way of banishing bad entities or forces. And so I think that's an interesting aspect of it, that it would be what John Keel would call the fact that aliens are often trickster figures that can shapeshift and manipulate things to because they come from a sort of dimension just beyond our own, and they were able to shift into our dimension, that they mess with our minds really and try to manipulate us. So you could argue it's hard for humans to know what are really angels or devils or aliens or men in black. They could all be the same thing, but responding to how you might interpret an ambiguous figure. So he was saying really that it's hard for us to actually know what's going on. We can only write down what people are experiencing and reporting back. But what's causing this? Is it something outside that's beaming into our brains to see these figures? Is it something really that's actually beamed into our reality? Or is it just from our own psyche and that we're responding to outside stimuli that we find difficult to interpret, or it's stimuli that our brain wants to help preserve our sanity? It's a bit of a Norman Harrison case. I think he felt very much on the edge of things, and he felt that these communications are very powerful and painful. He also had good entities to help him as well. So he was being shepherded by his visions, and that the Saint Michael one was there to be as powerful as the angel in the case of the grey man who was given the sword. And I think that's another thing that the aliens, and the angels and aliens, I suppose, are often seen as guardian figures. They're there to protect you. And Paul Bennett in my book,
I want to talk about
yeah,
Paul Bennett, right?
yeah,
Because he's in your book, but also in this article in Fortean Times
yeah,
talking about Sigma type of angels. Can you explain what that is?
yeah. That's what I mentioned earlier about the light entities almost. And he saw them over the Christmas of 1977. And some nights he didn't see this sort of glowing entity. And I think it was over a week-long period. He'd see it intermittently along with his friends. But in terms of being the guardian angels, he had this experience where he crashed off his bike. He'd already prophesied the day before to his friend that something bad was going to happen. And the next day, the chain broke on his bike and he crashed into a tree and fractured his skull. He went to hospital, and if they had to operate and put together his skull and everything, it didn't sound very nice. But he recovered really fast, and he then discovered a UFO had been seen over the hospital the night he was admitted. He seems to think that the UFOs and aliens had protected him, and so changed that prophecy of his that something bad would happen. I suppose something bad did happen, but his life was saved. And some correspondents of mine met him not long afterwards and said he'd made a really good recovery. And I think even the doctors were quite surprised how well he bounced back. He was quite a young man and everything, so I suppose they'd probably recover a lot faster than older people, but even so, they did think it was remarkable. That also bears in mind what Whitley Strieber writes about in his book Transformation. He's well known as a horror writer and a writer of communion, but he's written lots of other books about his experiences. In Transformation,
Yeah, he's been on my Radiate Wellness podcast. Whitley Strieber has. Yeah, very
yeah,
interesting fellow. Had
yeah.
many experiences.
And he saw an angel that was sort of dressed in white with piercing blue eyes. And there again, it was more the impression that it was an angel rather than a classic angel with wings and everything. Anyway, it predicted that he'd soon be on a journey. It could either lead to death or another avenue. And, uh, and then within a few months, he had to go on an aircraft journey. I think he went on two plane journeys. He had to go on one to see his mum who was ill, and then flying back, felt even worse and he was contemplating death. But fortunately, the plane landed and everything was okay. but he felt life seemed a lot better now. Things had changed and he had a different perspective on life. In a way, prediction did come true that nothing bad happened to him, and he did go on a slightly different route and felt that his life had been saved. So I think it's interesting that you've got two people who've had UFO connections, have this sort of guardian angel and predictive element to their stories. And yeah, I just found it quite fascinating that you can discover these things, and that once you start looking at the subject, you've got a sort of alien angel in your book and everything. So it's
Mhm.
uh, it's
That's
one of
what
these things where they turn up everywhere.
Well, that's what really made me sit up and notice about your book, Portraits of Alien Encounters Revisited, because you do have that chapter on angelic visitations and, angelic visions. And I don't think it matters to them what we call them, how we classify them. It does, there's quite a bit of overlap. More so when you think of what we would call biblically correct angels, the eyes and the various heads and the various things. What do you think that phenomena is about?
Yeah, I think that's an area really to look at in religious texts and everything. I think Ancient Aliens has covered that in one or two episodes, but I don't really watch Ancient Aliens as that much. To be honest, it sends me to sleep.
The voice of the narrator is very, very soothing.
But anyway, so people have been exploring the idea of angels in the Bible are equated with aliens of today, and my book confirms that attitude. But I think it's a tricky thing because these are often symbolic things, and they're not things straight out of illustrations from the past. They were more ambiguous, and I think with John Keel's theories that we could be shape shifters or tricksters. So it is difficult for people to know, are these good aliens or bad aliens? I think I got a letter from somebody, I think it might be mentioned in my article, and he wrote to me saying that he'd gone to some UFO meeting and the woman there said she'd had all these angelic visitations and alien visitations, and he took umbrage with her because he said, "How do you know they're angels?" And he said, his attitude was, "We're all evil," and that he tried to turn her mind, but in a way, isn't about the different people's perspective on these things, and I think that's what I mentioned about Norman Harrison. He was trying to do this balancing act between the evils of society and evil aliens. The good things about life is worth going on despite everything. And so there's that polarity of good and bad that seems to run through a lot of these UFO stories, even if religious or angelic ideas at the forefront of them. I think there's that issue about whether they're good or evil. And I think of this latest discussion about UAPs and non-human intelligences, quite a few people involved with that sort of research have also wondered what sort of non-human intelligences we are encountering, whether they are for good or bad.
Well, yeah, it seems the jury is out in terms of whether aliens are benevolent or malevolent. And I feel the vast majority of alien encounters is benevolent, right? Have you encountered any that have bad intention, ill intention?
I'm not sure. I think the trouble is we've got this ideas of alien invasions, even from the 1950s.
Mhm.
We had all these alien invasion movies, and usually the aliens were pretty nasty. They wanted to take over our planet, to kill everyone, right from War of the Worlds and the various film versions of it. They always wanted to come and zap us and take us over, but luckily we usually win out in the end until the next invasion, usually. And I suppose that was quite instilled in our minds, really, and that most That's what science fiction films. Doctor Who often has lots of enemies, like with some of cybernauts and cybermen and everything. So I think the vast majority of the science fiction media tends to show aliens as evil, really. But, there is a good side to them. But the contactees of the 1950s, people, George Adamski, always seem to meet the good aliens, so we're humanoids, not much different from us. We had long flowing hair and blue eyes. They spouted goodwill and peace to humanity. And I suppose people didn't always believe them, but at least the message was heartfelt, really. Whereas with abduction cases came along in the sort of 80s, it was more people being plucked out of their beds and being strapped to examination tables and being probed and prodded and everything. So that gave a bad publicity for alien encounters, really.
True.
And
Yeah, that's more salacious and is going to catch people's attention, and they want to
mm,
right, the if it bleeds, it leads, the doom and gloom that can catch people's attention. Of course, I believe that angels in general, and I think angels can be a very broad umbrella term to
mm.
cover all of these type of beings. I do believe that they're benevolent and have our best interest. I don't know. Yeah, what do you think on angels?
I love the idea that we come from the human psyche or from our own cultural expectations, really, because then you don't have to prove there's any outside evidence of. Usually, not even so much as physical evidence with angel encounters compared to UFOs. At least you can have a fragment of a UFO or something like that. As angels don't leave footprints. That could be the name of my next film.
Angels
But
don't leave footprints. Maybe that's the title of this episode.
yeah, so I think enigmatic. That's why I've called them astro angels, really, because often people are morphing angels with aliens, that they might be angels, but we've got a helmet on, or we've got some, or they actually emerged from a flying saucer in the case of Gene Hinckley in the Midlands. So there's that thing where ufology is an umbrella for all sorts of things. So ufology has sucked in angels, really, for
Well,
good or bad.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, we look at ancient art. You talked about ancient aliens
yeah.
earlier. We see these beings with wings and from Babylon in that area. You see beings that have the helmets on you talk about in your art.
Mm,
I mean, we see evidence of this stuff from so long ago,
mm,
seeped into our psyche, seeped into our culture, but not always at the forefront. It's always something that's always in the back of our mind that this could happen and this could be. So it's, I don't know, it's interesting. Now in your article in Fortean Times, you tie in high strangeness, which usually accompanies some of these UFO encounters, high strangeness, which is difficult to put your finger on. What is this? Anything that falls outside of a traditional sighting, but is still very strange. So you pull in your article, High Strangeness. You also pull in the events at Fatima,
yeah.
pull in some of these things. Yeah. So where do you think high strangeness and religious sightings fall into the phenomenon?
Yeah, I think there's a thing called UFO tunnel vision. I think Paul Bennett admitted he had that, and that everything's aliens. It's a bit Ancient Aliens, the TV series.
Right.
It's aliens, and we've got this alien viewpoint because of we're living in the space age and technology and everything. So we interpret anything from the past as being similar or just part of the UFO phenomenon. Perhaps some of the angel sightings should have their own department, really. Perhaps, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. Ufology tries to bring in everything when perhaps it should try and compartmentalize it, I suppose. It's just that everything leaches into the subject. And I think it just shows that human experiences are very varied and different, and that can be projected in different ways. So you can encounter angels, aliens, but even with angels come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. They can come humanoid, small, English little fairy entities. And it's same with aliens. You get the humanoids, the spindly greys, you get a praying mantis, some reptoids, insectoids, short ones, tall ones, robots and things. So there's an spectrum of entities, and you get the men in black, things like that. I suppose the men in black actually do interact with people and knock on their doors, and perhaps a more solid type of entity, but often they're related to more evil characters, really, almost devilish, if they're not government agents who are real government agents trying to shut people up. I think John Keel was of a view that a lot of these men in black were entities from outer space or from another dimension and nothing normal humans. So I think that's the thing. There's so many aspects to the subject, and I think it can just gets easy just to lump it all into the UFO pot and stir it up a bit. And I suppose that's where my term astro angels comes out, really, because I think it's a good fusion of these ideas, perhaps just going a bit of a step beyond the evidence, really. I just think it's a good catch-all idea, really. Perhaps more people might report these experiences, because in the past, if people have had an angelic experience, they're more to not report it to a UFO investigator, who would report it to the local priest or to other religious people, or they might post it on a religious website or something. So such things can get separated off, but often because people perhaps have angelic visions, also have UFO visions for people I interviewed, then they do come under the UFO umbrella, just because there's more to be UFO investigators
Right.
collecting this data, because I don't think many other people do collect this information.
That's just it. And there is some overlap, and it's all just out there, strange and odd. And so, where else do you classify it?
Yeah.
Where else do you put it? And I think there needs to be so much more research on this, but we also need people who have these experiences to
Mm.
share them and to talk about them so that
Yeah.
we can do some research around them, be it men in black, be it an angel encounter or visitation, or an alien encounter or visitation. So I would encourage everyone to read the book, your book, Portraits of Alien Encounters Revisited. You are really making the rounds on podcast circuit. I have to say, a lot of folks are talking about this book. A lot of people are talking about your work you've been doing since 1970s. But then also this article in the Fortean Times, and it is called Seeing Angels Instead, High-Strangeness UFO Cases. Oh, but there was one other thing I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to ask you about. Did you hear about the Russian cosmonaut sighting of angels?
Oh yeah, I've heard of that, where it's a sort of gigantic angelic vision he had, wasn't it?
It,
Is
it
that the one?
It was 1984, and
Yeah.
cosmonauts aboard the Soviet space station Salyut 7, and they saw strange lights and beings. And this happened a few times. This light filled up their craft, and it was so bright that it temporarily blinded them. They
All right.
portholes for the source and thought it might have been an explosion or something, but they saw humanoid faces of 7 angels just hovering just outside the space station, which was interesting. They had wings and halos. They were humanoid, but had wings and halos. But I've only seen this reported in one source. Now, this
All right.
on an earlier episode of Real Life Angel Encounters. So listeners have to go back and listen. That was episode 210. Yeah.
Well, that would definitely be Astro Angels, wasn't it?
Yes, Astro Angels for sure,
uh,
for sure. So an
uh,
interesting overlap. Hmm.
Cosmo Angels, if sinners Russians saw them.
Right, right. I mean, it was just a very random thing, but all of these things are mysterious. All of these things are unusual. All of these things are unexplained. And so
Hmm.
whether we call them angels or aliens, I mean, I don't think it really matters. The work that you're doing is so helpful to understand more of what is around us. People reach out and find out more about your work or contact you if they have questions.
Yeah, you can look me up on Facebook, and I've got a kind of UFO investigations Facebook page as well. But it's probably easier just to look up Nigel Watson UFO on Facebook, and you'll probably find me there.
Mhm.
And also, you can just email me on nigelwatson1@gmail.com. That's probably the easiest way.
Probably the
And also, you can get my book on Amazon and through most online retailers. And I think you can easily, it's same with your book, you should be able to easily order it from any bookshop. So that was a good thing to do.
Yeah. And of course, the book again is Portraits of Alien Encounters Revisited by Nigel Watson. So, Nigel, thanks so much for sitting down and talking to me about this
Okay.
fascinating subject.
Yeah.
Have you back on sometime when you've got more work out there that we can discuss. And where can folks find your article?
It's in the latest issue of Fortean Times. It's a print magazine. We've got a website, so you can order the print magazine from there. Oh, and I think it's on some of these magazine websites where you can order a digital copy. I think it's best to have a physical copy. I think we do sell it in some retailers in the United States as well, and in the UK. It's often seen in WH Smith and other sort of great magazine, really. So it's really good to get this article in it. And I also do a monthly column there, Sources of it, and I write about the latest things in ufology or themes, angelic UFOs, or whether UFOs are living entities, and the latest stories about UFO whistleblowers and things going on in Congress. So there's always something interesting going on in this world of ufology.
Yeah, always. And you're always at the forefront of it. So
I don't know about
I
that, but
would advise
I'm,
anyone who's interested in this
oh,
subject to go look you up.
all right. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and follow, and be sure to share this episode. The more people who know about this podcast, the more great story submissions we get. Have a story to share? Email your own real-life angel encounter to angelencounterspodcast@gmail.com or visit radiatewellnesscommunity.com/real-life angel encounters podcast. Or join our Facebook group and continue the discussion. Want to know what your angels and loved ones have to tell you? Schedule an appointment with me at radiatewellnesscommunity.com. A special thanks to James Wheeler for the original music and to Tiffany Baumgarten for the logo design.